Pam, do you believe that the main purpose of our incarnation in this world is to truly overcome fear? Because the fear seems to be the underlining thing that once these yogis and these masters, once they lose fear of everything, not, I'm going to jump in with a tiger, though there's stories of that. Um, but once they transcend fear in their lives, things open up to them in a world of like, oh, okay, I see the code in the matrix now all of a sudden. It's all about fear, and it's in fear in every shape and form that you can imagine, because that's what runs this whole reality is it's fear. It is fear. Would you agree?
Totally, unless I mean this is the lifetime potentially of mastery.
Yes.
So so if you can be aware of these all, and the reason, Alex, I think they're happening as well, I mustn't lose my thread here, but I think the reason they're happening is because we've got such high frequency energy coming in and such energy of love coming in,
Mhm.
and this is pure physics now, it destabilizes the low frequency energy. And so there's
That's
a
what's happening.
churn. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So anything that's not born of love and has not been for the highest good of humanity is collapsing. But it's going to be like a cartoon. It's going to be writ large because the collapse is going to be so noisy and so big. And so that's what we're seeing right now. But if it drags your focus to that, we're going to keep on repeating it and replicating it. And so it's really down to having the mastery of your frequency and your state of being to say, no, I'm aware that's happening. I'm going to send all the love and compassion I can via my group meditations all over the world. But I am going to focus on the highest form of love, joy, gratitude, compassion that I can possibly summon, because I know that will make the world a better place. It'll help my reality, it'll help yours. Before every conversation, I say, let this be for my highest good of all, highest good of the earth, because it's going to feed into the collective and help them. And, knowing very gifted people, I'm so blessed, way more gifted than I am, but they are really starting to manifest things that they never believed they possibly could in this lifetime. They're manifesting, new homes, or, money suddenly arriving, or, they're almost at the very, very kind of first millimeter of becoming an ascended masters and all the manifestations you read about with those. And so but we got to get to grips with this mastery of frequency and our state of being, because everything comes from the inside out. And in a sense, that's, if we can learn to drop into stillness and drop into our breath, that is the most important, most powerful thing you can possibly do in a day.
Hmm.
Drop into stillness, drop into your breath. That's your point of power, not scattering it by worrying about the past or the future. Your point of power is that zero point of stillness. And that's when you're in your sovereignty to optimally create. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense in the world. And when you were saying that, there was an image that flew into my head. Have you ever had a fish tank in your life?
Yes. Yes.
So if anyone who's ever had a fish tank in their life knows that when you look at a fish tank, it looks clear. But then you pull out about, what is it, 30% of whatever the water amount of water it is to put in fresh water. And when you put in the fresh water, everything gets just brought up, all the
Yeah.
garbage, all the junk
Exactly that.
gets pot up. And all of a sudden, what you thought was clear is like, oh, good Lord, there's a lot of garbage underneath that's been hiding completely out of the view of people. And now it's all over the place. And now you've got to deal with it. But
Yeah.
the key is, what you were saying is to find that inner place where you can stand in the chaos and
Yeah.
be centered while it goes around you. Not ignore,
Don't add to it.
yeah, don't add to it. Just stay within your own space in that sense and send out love. And that hopefully starts to clean up the tank faster.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because what that does is go beyond all the polarization. You've got extreme polarization in the US politically, I'm right, you're wrong, whichever side you take. But that ding dong, it's like a puppet puppet show. It doesn't get us beyond the polarity. What gets us beyond the polarity is to get to that unity consciousness. And that unity consciousness you can feel if you drop into your breath and your stillness. And everybody can do that. Every single person can do that every day, several times if you can. But you know, this new earth, new consciousness, this revolution of love is not loud. It's super, super quiet. You're never going to see it on the nightly news. It's never going to be, slam bam. It's never going to be noisy. It's really quiet because there are people meditating, going on soup runs and food banks and, doing wonderful things for people. And they're not shouting about it, but they're coming together in community. They're buying land, they're growing food, they're sharing, they're chanting, they're getting around the fire. And it's going back to what makes us human. It's going back to nature and getting in rhythm with the natural patterns. It's understanding the earth. It's connecting like the Lemurians did with all the other species. It's hearing the animals speak, the trees speak, the birds speak to you. It's getting back into that organic, natural wholeness. That's what we're remembering. That's what we're going back to, and it's that simple, not this kind of crazy shouting out there.
And it brings something to my mind as well, since I was just over in Europe. You were talking about food and natural. I mean, the food in Europe, I know it's not perfect, but it's so far beyond what we have here in the States because of the regulations, or because they don't allow certain foods there, where in America food is a profit margin, and in Europe it is about health, because
Yeah.
of because it's more costly for them to have a sick population, because it's all unified, public health care there. So they're like, we got to take care of our people. And it's fascinating because now that ripple is it's finally rippling here to the States. Coca-Cola is going to finally take off corn syrup, and they're going to use sugar. I drank a
Oh,
Coke. I know, right? Crazy. But that same company is making Coca-Cola in Europe with sugar, and in Mexico with sugar. I actually drank a Coke, it's a couple sips of Coke in Europe, in Paris. I'm like, this is what is happening? It is, but it's these ripples are starting to happen. I'm starting to notice it. In Europe, bread has 4 ingredients, not 45. You know, I mean, I can read all the ingredients in bread. That's why you can eat bread in Europe, even if you're gluten intolerant, because it's
yeah, you can. Yeah,
so,
it's much healthier.
yeah, it's a completely different thing. So I'm using that as an example of these things are changing and are rippling. People
Yeah,
are starting to take notice because they're like, no, I don't want this anymore. This is not acceptable anymore. And the
yeah.
consciousness is shifting around the world, not just here. Now,
That's really true. People are reaching their, this far and no further point.
yeah, and I think that's going to happen with everything, where it's going to happen with war, with their politics, with their media, with their food, with their religion or spiritual. There's a certain point that every aspect of our lives is going to be like, that's the line that I'm not willing to cross, and it's starting to
We're
come
done.
more and more. Now, Pam, I do have to ask you the most important question, controversial question ever in the astrology world. So I need you to prepare yourself for it. Pluto. Is it a planet or not? Really? Because I keep hearing Pluto's not a planet. Is it a planet? What is it?
Oh, because quite a few years ago it received a new designation of dwarf planet,
It was
as opposed
demoted. It was demoted.
it was demoted. And boy, I tell you, when you have a Pluto transit, that is a life-changing time. That is absolutely a life-changing time. I had Pluto transiting over my ascendant. That's the marriage axis. I got divorced. That I could have, timed. And even though I didn't want that to happen necessarily, although I left my husband, you resist these things because they're so painful. But it was kind of, it was there as divine timing. And so Pluto brings about, and not to suggest it's an external, because it comes actually from as an urge within you. It's all within you, that you have to step into your power. You have to step into your power in a much bigger way in the world than you ever done. And that for me was walking out of the marriage. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done all the stuff I've done in the last, well, certainly 20 years anyway.
So
Yeah.
the long answer is yes, Pluto's real.
Yeah, it's real. But to add to that, Alex, I don't just think they're spinning rocks and they are absolutely matter. I think they're probability waves of consciousness. that all have a pitch or a resonance.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, you just looking at Jupiter, looking at Saturn, looking at Uranus, these planets have an energy to them. Earth has Gaia. She's Gaia. There's a soul. I've spoken to many spiritual masters about this, and I ask, do planets have souls? And if planets have souls, do galaxies have souls? And if galaxies have like, the Milky Way has its own vibe, very different than the billion other galaxies that are out there. And then you start looking at it from a very macro way, and you look at it, start going down to the micro version of it. If you look at it from the galaxy to the planets to the embodiments of the creatures of the planets, and then you go all the way down to the atoms, and I mean it just keeps going down. So like it's just the galaxies are atoms
Right.
of the universe, isn't it? It's just your head
Yeah.
starts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's all fractal. It all fractal. If you look at images, Professor Robert Temple wrote this brilliant book called The New Science of Heaven, and in it he had a lot of images of far, far deep space with all of the supergalactic highways of light and information, and they're just like the neurons inside, like your neural network inside your brain. Just everything is fractal. It's like a series of Russian dolls. And so I think the entire thing is one consciousness. The entire thing is one consciousness, and we're just ants at one level
Mhm.
in that consciousness. But everything is connected. Everything feeds into each other.
To watch the full video, click on the link below, and don't forget to subscribe.